Okay, so we're back. We have a new election model here, and we have some other things that we want to cover here because there are some new numbers that I want to show you really quickly right after this. But I do also want to talk about a new ad that Pierre dropped. This one. Oh no, not this one. It's somewhere around here. There's a new ad that Pierre dropped, and so I want to talk about it because I think there's definitely some things that we need to unpack there. There's some other things too, like this I'm going to cover as well in a sec. But yeah, there's a lot to talk about. So first we're going to start off with this though. So this is a map that we have, a new model that we have. This is by our friend Real Albanian Pat. Really great guy. He's on Twitter. He's more so like a PC, but he's still a credible source nonetheless. And so he made this map. This is what he thinks will happen. This is his official prediction. So I'm reacting to his prediction. But nonetheless, take a look at it. 185 to 107. Again, this 185, if you're a conservative, I mean 13 points above majority is a sign of concern because you guys were expected to win a huge majority, right? But now you're at 185. I mean, this is kind of concerning. Now for the Liberals, still some more cause for concern as well because they're not really reaching that 120 mark that they at least wanted to get if they were to limit the Conservatives to a minority. So there's a lot to unpack there. But I just want to focus in on Toronto and Montreal really quickly. So Montreal is all red. So a lot of this Montreal area, or a lot of these Montreal area ridings were actually going turquoise blue for the bloc. So the fact that they're now going red is kind of shocking. Also, Toronto. Look at Toronto. Toronto is very red. So Toronto was a very interesting one over the last few months because a lot of these GTA ridings were expected to go blue. And so the thing with Toronto is they easily flip. So they easily flip these ones. There's still some ground to gain here, obviously. The biggest thing with Toronto was the St. Paul's riding. When they lost St. Paul's, when the Liberals lost St. Paul's, I'm talking about, that was a disaster. That was bad. And so when you start flipping these ridings slowly but surely, you're bound to eventually make some small gains, but which is going to end up helping you out in the long run. Now, what else are we looking at? Winnipeg as well. Winnipeg was very blue, which is shocking. But now it's starting to get some red in there. And then Vancouver as well. Vancouver was pretty blue as well, which is shocking too. And we're going to talk about Vancouver in a second because there is a topic that we need to discuss related to Vancouver, which was addressed in Pierre Poilievre's ad, which we will watch. So we're going to watch that ad in a second. But first, I want to address this. Right here. So Pierre Poilievre released, I don't know, I guess a tweet or an X, I don't know what you call it nowadays. Trying to be a normal guy playing hockey in $2,000 shoes. He's just like Justin. So let's take a look at these shoes. Not sure what they are. Black leather, triple stitch, Veta sneakers. Okay, interesting. What is it, Zegna? I don't know what Zegna is, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think those are the shoes. I mean, I'm not going to deny it and sit here and pretend that's not the shoes. But what does that have to do with his policies? I'm just trying to, I don't know how that makes him like Justin, first of all. And so trying to be a normal guy and playing hockey, he did actually play hockey at Harvard. That's a fact. So I don't know why that would be him trying to be a normal guy. And then I don't know how that has anything to do with Justin Trudeau and how that has anything to do with his policies. So that's an interesting post. Not really sure what to make of it because I don't think there's much, structure with that post. Oh, well, look at this. A brand new ad. Okay, so we're going to watch this one too. This is going to be a live reaction. But I want to watch this one first.
It's a challenge.
Let's watch this.
Fentanyl is an absolute crisis in the United States. It's a challenge here, but it's a crisis there. It's a challenge here, but it's a crisis there.
I think Mark Carney sounds incredibly ignorant here. I mean, how many lives does it take for the government to consider something a crisis? And if you don't treat it like a crisis, and in his eyes, if it isn't one, are you just going to wait till it is one? It sounds like he's been in his ivory tower for too long. If you walk in any city center, including Toronto, there's people suffering and strung out everywhere.
When you realize that we've had almost 50,000 people die since 2016, that's like wiping out a small town.
Fentanyl.
Okay, so a few things to unpack there. So first of all, fentanyl is a type of opioid, for those that don't know that. An opioid, there's multiple types of opioid. There's codeine, there's OxyContin, there's fentanyl, there's, I think, morphine as well as an opioid. There's multiple types of opioids. That's number one. Number two, they mentioned the number 50,000. We're going to fact check that because I actually do have the number right here. So this is not the actual number. This is just toxicity deaths. related to opioids. Opioids, notice that. It doesn't say fentanyl specifically, but it says opioids. So this was about 3,700 in from January to June 2024. So that is a lot. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that's not a lot. Those are people's loved ones. Those are people's family members. Those are people's cousins, coworkers, all that kind of stuff. These are a lot of people. That is very unfortunate. And so 21 deaths per day is astonishing and frankly sickening. I mean, that is an issue. Is it a crisis? That's up for debate. I don't know how you determine a crisis versus a challenge. I'm not really sure. But Carter used the word challenge, not a crisis. Now, I do have the U.S. numbers right here. So the U.S. had 107,000 drug overdose deaths in total in the year. And this is all, so the new data shows opioids decreased from an estimated 84,000 to 81,000. So they had 81,000 deaths related to opioids. So when you're comparing that number, you have about 4,000, approximately 4,000 in 6 months versus 81,000 a year. I mean, you could do the math. It's probably close to 8,000 in a year for Canada. If you are sort of basing on that, that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. The US has 10 times more deaths than Canada. Like that is by definition much bigger on a much larger scale. Now, I do want to talk about that 50,000 because this is actually true. There have been 49,000 opioid-related deaths. Now, does that imply that it's always fentanyl? Not really, because if you take a look right here, over 75% of opioid involve fentanyl. So yeah, 75%. So if we do the math, it's more so, I'll pull up a calculator. So if we do the math really quickly, I don't know why it's not working. Oh yeah, here you go. So do the math really quickly. If you say, what is the amount? 49,105. And it says, we'll say 77% just because it said over 75%. That's 37,000 people. That's a big difference. I mean, okay, 38,000 if you round it up. So that is a big difference from 50,000. That is 12,000 less. And so you talk about BC, Alberta, and Ontario. Those are the main epicenters, if you want to call it that. And yeah, so I think what we need to establish really quickly, I don't know who narrated this, to be quite frank with you. Let's take a look at the name. I don't know who it was. Matthew from Toronto. I don't know who that is. But, saying 50,000 is, and even Pierre, 50,000 is not technically from fentanyl. I mean, if you're doing the math, it's about 38,000 from fentanyl. So I'm not saying it's not an issue. It absolutely is an issue. You could walk on the street. It's a complete disaster. You see these people who are hopeless. I mean, it's sad. But it's not 50,000. So it's a big difference. Now, next thing I want to talk about is this ad really quickly. But before we get to that, I want to talk about this. How is Canada addressing this issue? Well, they have a fentanyl czar. Now, this whole czar thing, I don't really agree with it. I think it's kind of weird that we're sort of catering to whatever Trump wants. I find it kind of goofy. But nonetheless, Canada made a fentanyl czar, and his goal is to stop the drug from crossing the U.S. northern border. And so it's, what's his name? Kevin Brousseau. He was a RCMP officer back in the day. He was very high ranking. So he definitely knows what he's doing. I'm kind of unsure as to what he exactly is doing. Like, what's his day-to-day looking like? What are the logistics? What is he coordinating? I'm kind of confused by that. I don't know if he's coordinating a, police presence. I don't know if he's coordinating, I don't know. I don't know what he's doing. But, because they haven't really spoken about it much. Canada's newly appointed fentanyl czar says his goal is to bring the already low percentage of the deadly opioids smuggled south into the United States down to zero. So that's a notion that I want to address really quickly. Fentanyl is not smuggled from Canada to the US. That is such a ridiculous statement. It's so preposterous because it doesn't happen. What happens is they smuggle fentanyl from Mexico, from the Mexican cartels, to Canada. That's a big difference because we don't smuggle the fentanyl to the US. That does not happen. I mean, it's like 0.2%. That's negligible. That's a negligible. I'm not saying it's not an issue because it is an issue, but it's a very negligible amount. So the notion that, Canada has a huge fentanyl presence and that they bring in all this fentanyl and all these drugs from Canada to the US, it's not true. It's false. If it is 1 pound or 10 pounds, we only have the possibility of death that could represent. Yeah, blah blah blah. And so yeah, I think fine. It's a good step in some sort of direction. Take a look at this. Look at this. 34.8 pounds of fentanyl came in from Canada to the US last year. And you want to know how much came from Mexico? 21,000 pounds. That is unbelievable. That is unbelievable. And it's not even close. I mean, look, in 2023, it was 1.6 pounds. Now, I know fentanyl is a very deadly drug, and 1 pound is ridiculously lethal. But you compare that to 26,000, that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. I don't understand this notion that Canada is the issue, because it's not. It's simply false. Canada is not the fentanyl issue. If anything, the US probably smuggles in more fentanyl to Canada than Canada does to the US. It's ridiculous that they're even trying to make this argument, because the fact of the matter is, Trump is not trying to do that. Trump is not using this argument as the main, it's not like the main reason that he's imposing the tariffs. The main reason he wants to impose these tariffs, which he will, by the way, get back to in a second, probably in a month or two, the main reason why he's doing it is so that he can basically force our hand. That's all he's trying to do. He does not think that there's actually a fentanyl crisis that is coming from Canada to the US, because that's not a thing. Everybody can sort of agree on that. Democrats, Republicans, Canadians, Americans, everybody agrees that Canada is not the issue. It's Mexico. So I think it's a ridiculous statement, and it's a ridiculous notion. But anyways, I want to talk about Ontario really quickly. So Ontario, we have some new numbers. Not much of a change, but still, I'll talk about it nonetheless. Doug Ford projected to win 98 seats. Again, I keep going with this number of 98. This 98 to 102 is probably the range that's going to be in. Now, obviously, 330 Canada is not completely 100% accurate, but they were very accurate for BC, so I want to give them some credit there. They were very accurate. They had EB at around, I think, 46 or 47 seats, and I think you ended up winning 47. So they were very accurate last time around. They do have 98. They do have the Liberals at 12. And then NDP 11. If NDP does win 11, they lose party status. So that would be pretty bad for them if that happens, because they did actually, I think they are the official opposition right now, if I'm not wrong. And if you take a look right here again, the popular vote, I mean, Doug Ford's been almost at 50% for a bit now. I mean, you know, anybody that's over 40%, I find that's sort of a runaway election at that point. And I think, you know, we could talk about Pierre Poilievre and his numbers. He's technically not really at 40 points right now. So I think that's sort of not much of a runaway election. But this definitely is. I mean, it's 45 to 27. It's almost 20 points. And if you take a look at the C counts, that's what really matters. This is beyond a blowout. And then if we take a look again, yeah, C projections, they've been pretty consistent around 98, 99. You know, I think he had 101 at one point. That's kind of the highest that he was at. I don't think he'll go any higher, but nonetheless, he has been very consistent. They've been a 99% chance of winning the most seats for a while now. And then again, odds of election outcome, PC majority has been 99% the whole time. I'm sure if you take a look at the betting odds, they do have Doug Ford favored by quite a bit. But I do want to go back really quickly to 2022. Oh, actually, no, I want to look at the seat count. Where is it? Yeah, here. Take a look at this, guys. So in the 2022 election, he won 83 seats. Now, the day before, I think it was the day before, or 2 days before, they had him projected at 81. So 338 Canada has been very accurate with their numbers. And if you take a look, on election day, it ended up being 83 and 31. Fine. They were slightly inaccurate for the NDP one because they did have him at 26. But nonetheless, they did have a pretty good idea of what was going to happen. Now, you're going from 83, and you're really like bringing it up a notch when you're going to 98. That's a huge difference. Huge difference. So this 83, I mean, that was still 20 above a majority. He'll be at like, I don't know. He might even be at 30 above a majority. You never know. Or 40 above a majority. I mean, you never know. It could really happen. And what I will say right now is that this time around, the NDP and Liberals have much less popular support than they did in the last election. If you take a look right here, overall, the NDP was a lot more popular in the last election than they were this election, than they are this election. I mean, they're at 17% right now, or 18%. That's very bad for them, because think of it this way. This 18%, if they had been at 25 or 23 or whatever, that's chipping away at the PC number. So they would have been lowered, and so they would have also gained some seats as well, maybe have one-party status. So a lot to take in there. I just want to see how much the Liberals won last election. They won, I think so they won 8. That's really bad. Like 8 seats is bad. So they are not official party status right now, which is, you know, I mean, I think that's, you know, is it bad? yeah, I guess so. But if they do somehow achieve party status, I think Bonnie Crombie is going to be there for a while. And so if Bonnie Crombie is sort of the one that brings them out of that void of darkness, the dark days of the Ontario Liberal Party, which is 8 seats, which is bad, by the way, because the Ontario Liberal Party was dominant at one point. For those that are from Ontario, if she's the one that can bring them up, I mean, not that much, 4 seats is not that much, but still, if she is the one that brings the party status, they will keep her around for a long time. And then lastly, I want to end off with this really quickly. I want to talk about Jagmeet Singh really quickly. Jagmeet Singh and Burnaby Central. No, this is Ontario. I want to talk about Burnaby Central really quickly because I think, again, Jagmeet Singh is a very interesting guy in the sense that he has miscalculated almost every step. I think looking at it from an objective perspective, he thought that he would win, or he thought he'd have a good chance, if Justin Trudeau had been the Liberal leader. And look what's happening now. He's hemorrhaging support to the Liberals. And so are the Conservatives as well. They're also hemorrhaging support, but that's another story. Now look at this riding. Look at this. The Liberals, for the first time in I don't know how long, I don't think it's ever even happened actually, in this riding's history, because this is a brand new riding. They're getting rid of Burnaby South. This is the first time that they're actually at 3% chance of winning Burnaby Central. So soon enough, I mean, as far as I'm aware, you might actually see this 3% go up, and they'll actually replace the NDP to be the second most likely to win the seat, which would be something. I mean, if you're losing your own seat, and you're losing your seat to the Liberals, who are the party that, you sort of backstabbed in some respects, that would be pretty bad. That'd be pretty bad. And then again, we take a look right here. Yeah, I mean, it's not looking good for Jagmeet Singh, man. It's not looking good. But I do want to say one thing, though. The Conservatives, while they did go up in support, or in odds of winning, they did go down in support. So that's interesting. So the only party that has actually gone up in terms of actual support has been the Liberals in this riding. So all I'm going to say is this. The Liberals might be a dark horse in this riding. They might be. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think about that ad reaction. Because, actually, wait. No, I want to watch this one really quickly. So we can react to it really quickly.
Is greater than the size of the country's entire economy.
The Canadian dollar is now at its lowest.
The Liberal Party understands the importance of a stronger economy. The Liberal Party understands the importance of managing people's money carefully.
The Liberal government overspent its most recent budget target by almost $22 billion.
Canada's household debt is greater than the size of the country's entire economy.
The Canadian dollar is now at its lowest point since peak pandemic. Before that, the last time it fell below 72 cents US was almost a decade ago.
It's not about numbers. It's not in the abstract.
Ontario mortgage delinquencies exceeded $1 billion in the first quarter of 2024 for the first time ever.
It's really gone downhill in the last 10 years, the quality of life.
We talk about possibly leaving Canada because why should we stay here? Just be overtaxed, underserviced, healthcare sucks, education sucks, government is bloated.
Oh my god. Okay, you know what, man? I don't know. This just like Justin argument is so, just like that guy said, he said government is bloated. I think the just like Justin argument is kind of bloated too. I think it's kind of ridiculous that, and I'll say this quite frankly to Pierre, with all due respect to him, I find it rich that he keeps attacking and he keeps talking about whatever things that he wants to talk about Carney and being associated with the Liberals, yet he has nothing that he wants to propose. I mean, the only thing I've heard that he's proposed that's really been tangible, and by the way, we haven't been given numbers about it at all. We haven't been given any numbers at all about the equalite base that he wants to fund. So I find it kind of rich that he's doing that. He talks about cutting government. How much are you going to cut government? How much are you going to cut it? Where are you going to cut it? When are you going to cut it? Like, there's so many things that you got to talk about. The carbon tax, Carney's already said 3-4 times that he's going to get rid of it. If I'm Pierre Poilievre in the war room, if I'm his people, I'm telling him, no, you need to stop doing this. You need to switch and pivot gears ASAP. Because this strategy of just attacking and not providing any solutions is not resonating with the average Canadian voter. It's not. The average Canadian voter does not care about his just like Justin argument, his, axe the tax argument. Nobody cares about that because that's already a non-issue. That's already been dealt with. Right? So if I'm Pierre Poilievre or his people, I'm telling them right now, you got to switch your tone. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have an election in the next 3-4 months, and you're going to have people who are going to see who the candidates are. They're going to see, oh, you have Mark Carney, Governor Bank of England, Governor Bank of Canada. Say whatever you want about him. It doesn't really matter. But he has credentials. Versus Pierre Poilievre, oh, let's take a look at their policy platforms. Oh, one guy has 2 slogans. One guy has a platform. I don't know if Carney is going to have a platform by then, but let's say he does. It's going to be a stark contrast. And I think the average voter, as far as I'm aware, I think the best time to release your platform is right now. He wants to talk about snippets. Fine, you can release those snippets, no problem. But you're now in the unofficial campaign period. You know what I mean? It's stupid that he's withholding the information that everybody wants to know about. Because at the end of the day, whether he becomes prime minister or not doesn't really matter. What matters is what he's going to do once he's in that position. That's what matters. And so the average Canadian voter does not really care about the just like Justin argument. They really don't. They care, how are you going to bring down my grocery prices? How are you going to deal with the annexation threats? You know what I mean? How are you going to deal with inflation? There's just so many things. How are you going to deal with housing? There's just so many factors. And so when you start resorting to slogans and weak, meager attacks, I don't really think that's that effective. Now, for Carney, I think the other thing is with him, he has to really get out there and start telling people what he actually believes in, because frankly, many people don't know what he believes in. So these misconceptions are easily perpetuated when you're not really telling people what you believe in. So these events and stuff, it's fine, but I think he needs to start coming out more in public, going to interviews, whatever, and tell people what you think. One thing I will give Pierre for sure is that he does go on interviews quite often. He does tell his stances on things, but he doesn't tell people what his policies would be. So that's a big difference with Pierre. And I don't know Carney, frankly, what his policies are, as far as I'm aware. He doesn't have any policies either. So that's another thing. He does have some policies that he said, he's going to get rid of the carbon tax, blah, blah, blah. But that's not enough. I think he needs to come out and say, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to build this many homes, blah, blah, blah. And so that's probably more valuable than just blabbering on about axe tax or, get rid of carbon tax Carney. I'm talking about Pierre Poilievre right now. I think that's a lot more valuable when we start talking about policy, when we get the adults in the room, start talking about policy and not about slogans and these weak attacks. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I think there's some people might get angry with what I said, but frankly, I'm just telling you guys what the average voter thinks. I'm not here to sit and pick sides and pretend that, I prefer one candidate over the other. I'm not going to give my opinion on this matter because I don't think that's really valuable. The point of me here is to break down these situations, try to provide a perspective for both sides. That's ultimately what I'm trying to do here. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see y'all in the next one.